new World Trade Center Building 7 looms above the site of its original. Building 7 was a 47-story high-rise, not hit by an airplane. Yet it was the third modern steel-frame skyscraper to collapse rapidly and symmetrically on 9/11. It was a football field away from the North Tower and sustained minor damage from falling debris. Building 7's precipitous collapse was blamed on normal office fires.
I'm Steve Barish, founder and president of Barish Architects and Associates, Inc., a 33-year-old architecture, planning, and engineering firm. One of the things that really interested me is how quickly the Tower 7 fell. It fell within 7 seconds approximately from top to bottom. This building was built in the mid-'80s and met all the codes at the time.
From about 1965 until about 1985, most of my experience has been in high-rise, multi-story steel buildings. NIST would have us to believe that these was a typical office fire, scattered office fires, if you will, that brought this building down. Since the mid-'60s, I've tried to follow high-rise fires because they're something we worry a lot about as we design these buildings. And I'm not aware of any high-rise building that have come down as a result of fires.
I first became aware of the problems with the official account of the collapse when I saw a DVD online from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. They pointed out various problems with the official story, and the ones that caught my attention were the rapid failure of the connections in order for the building to come down at the rate that it did.
I've been involved in many large projects, including overseeing several high-rise buildings ranging in size from 14 stories to 40. Over the course of 20 years, I'm mainly called in to help with very large, difficult projects. When I watched Building 7 collapse, it basically left no doubt in my mind that something was wrong. Building 7 had not been hit by a plane.
You want to call your mother or something?
We just heard one more explosion. That's about the fourth one we've heard.
The two buildings then exploded. They were leveled.
But there was another explosion on the far side of one of the buildings from where we're standing. The reverberation and another explosion on the right-hand side. There seemed to be another explosion, and also on the right-hand side. There was also another explosion. We're not sure if that was extra reverberation from what happened at the World Trade Center, or if that was an added explosion.
All of a sudden, there was a roll, an explosion, and we could see coming at us a ball of flame stories high.
It was blown up. The World Financial Center was blown up.
It was an explosion. It was in the lobby, and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
Is that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was. Yeah, definitely a secondary explosion. Because we was inside waiting to go upstairs, and on the way upstairs, the whole fucking plane blew. It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. Then it exploded. Then the whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside.
We watched the first explosion. People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings can blow up. This ain't done yet.
You're in the building trying to help people, and it's exploding on you inside the building. So I don't think it'll get any worse than this.
We were in the lobby, gathering to go up and start doing a search on the upper floors. So as we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion.
Yeah, that did look like there was an explosion as it went down.
It went up.
There was an explosion. We were on the support floor, which is a basement. Guy came in running. All his skin was out of his body.
Another explosion at World Trade.
It looked like there was a whole bunch of explosions at the bottom, like windows and shit fell out. And the top fell to the right, and the bottom fell to the left.
Tower 1 just came down, the whole side of it just collapsed. Like it was a bomb inside of it. This whole thing just imploded, like just came down.
I don't know whether it's another explosion or a portion of the building falling away, but something major just happened at that building.
We just witnessed some kind of secondary follow-up explosion on the World Trade Center number 2, the one that is on the south that is difficult to make out through the debris and smoke. The second tower, the only one that was standing, tower number 1, Just we saw some kind of explosion, a lot of smoke come out of the top of the tower, and then it collapsed down onto the streets below.
There has just been a huge explosion. We can see a billowing smoke rising.
I guarantee you right now that the information about that attack was in the system and somebody missed it. Very important. The information was there to know that that attack was coming, and somebody didn't see the signals. And that's from my own personal intelligence background. All of my experience after that in the intelligence world tells me that when something that big goes by, somebody missed the information. So I was a believer, absolute believer, that the attack was a terrorist attack, that it was all done by other forces. And after that periods, my wife began to put pieces together, and she said, I don't think that attack was done by the enemy, the terrorists that you indicated. I said, you're wrong. She said, I don't believe it. I said, you're wrong. And so she began to find bits and pieces of information, and she would present them to me, and I said, no, not my government. My government would not tell a lie like that. And I just disbelieved. I was so ingrained in my belief system that I could not believe, I literally could not believe that anybody but a sort of Arab terrorist could do something like that. And then one day, I saw a picture. It was a photograph of the Pentagon and the hole in the Pentagon. And I looked at it and I said, wow. And then I looked at it again. I said, something's wrong. Something's wrong with this picture. Then I kept looking at it. And then I began to not look at it just at a glance, but to study the photograph itself. What's wrong with this picture? Why is your belly saying, my kinesthetic aspect of my processing system saying something wrong with that picture? Well, there was something wrong. And so I analyzed it, not just photographically, I did measurements, I did all kinds of it. I checked the plane.
Now we go to videotape the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Let's take a look in this side-by-side comparison with a known controlled demolition on the right. Did the building fall into its own footprint? Pretty much so. Do we have demolition waves? And how do these remove the column support? Well, here's a floor plan of Building 7. Now, to bring a building smoothly, symmetrically into its own footprint without falling over, what we have to do is remove the core columns, because what we want to do is bring the outside of the building in on itself. Now, this involves a high degree of precision that fire is not capable of.
The first report was from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Administration. Appendix C of their report provided strong evidence of extremely high temperatures at the World Trade Center in the form of highly corroded and eroded steel samples saved from the buildings after they were destroyed. FEMA described samples of steel that had been thinned to razor sharpness. In some cases, there were inexplicable holes in the steel. The fire engineering professors who found the samples could not come up with an explanation for it. They also could not explain the sulfidation of the steel. That is, steel had been chemically changed at the microstructural level in ways that indicated a chemical eutectic mixture had been achieved between sulfur, iron, and oxygen, causing steel to melt.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry. Like lava from a volcano.
This is like watching the collapse of an active volcano. And the dust from it is not unlike that from a volcano.
Surface temperatures in the debris piles were found to be as high as 750 degrees Celsius a week after 9/11. As you've heard already today, there's an explanation for all this officially unexplained evidence. This explanation is that the thermite reaction was present and occurring at the World Trade Center on 9/11 and afterward in the pile at the World Trade Center site. The thermite reaction is an extremely exothermic chemical reaction between aluminum powder and a metal oxide. The metal oxide is typically iron oxide, which you can see here on the left with the reddish color. The temperature at which thermite burns approaches 3,000 degrees Celsius for some mixtures, which would explain the evidence discussed so far in this testimony.
My son Bobby, almost 10 years ago, died right here at the site of the North Tower. We came up to New York and we did find his body. We took Bobby home that week and buried him a week later on Tuesday the 18th. For years and years, I've been trying to find out what happened that day. A few years ago, I finally ran into the doctor who examined Bobby, and he gave me an outline. He told me not to look at the pictures, but he gave me an outline of all his injuries. And all his injuries were in the chest and in the face. Back of him, no problem. His skull was still intact, but everything was blown off his face. He lost his arm and severe lacerations of his chest. So from what I talked to the doctor, Bobby died instantly.
The bottom elevator, the glass, just flames exploded out the front of the World Trade Center. Glass flew everywhere.
What happened was I was down in the basement. All of a sudden we heard a loud bang. And the elevator doors blew open. Some guy was burnt up. So I dragged him out. His skin was all hanging off. So I dragged him out and I pulled him out of the parking lot. This was what was left on it. I pulled him out. When I pulled him out, I looked up and the second bomb blew off.
Bobby walked into the lobby, or might not have even made it into the lobby, and there was a huge explosion. In an explosion, in a detonation, the air that shoots out from that explosion is supersonic. The gases shoot out in supersonic speed, and then the heat follows it. The 9/11 Commission hearings states that a fireball from the plane hitting from the 93rd up to the 98th floor, because the plane went in on an angle. The idea, again, the commission saying that only a fireball created this damage. The fireball supposedly that came down does not have that energy. Remember, every window in the North Tower was blown out. You have an area of 208 feet by 208 feet. It's impossible that a fireball created that damage. So therefore, my thing with Bobby was that he was walking into the towers. There was a huge explosion. It killed him instantly, hit him in the face, hit him in the chest, obviously took off his arm, and that's how he died. And remember, the 9/11 Commission report refused to acknowledge the testimony they got from firemen, from policemen, from the EMS workers of these explosions that were taking place in the sub-basement. And both the 9/11 Commission report and NIST lied about that.
Unlike the attack on the World Trade Center, the attack on the Pentagon was not broadcast on live television. In fact, within the first hours of the attack, the FBI had confiscated video footage from dozens of locations, the vast majority of which has never been released.
We're at a hotel in Arlington, Virginia. It shows the explosion that followed the crash of American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon, but the video does not show the airplane. The video's existence was disclosed in 2002. A hotel manager says it was confiscated by the FBI. It was just publicly released as the result of a lawsuit. It shows the explosion that followed the crash of American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon, but the video does not show the airplane.
Right up in here, this is somebody who believes, let me read that text for you. Supposedly over there, that is the left wing impact damage extending beyond the impact hole. See, it's a nice parallel black mark here. That's the wing. This is very neat now, isn't it? Where are the plow marks from the engines hanging down, for example? Or, how can this thing land at an alleged 500 miles an hour, etc.? This is a wing mark. Oh, I buy that. Oh, yeah. Very good. And then, down here, it says probable aircraft debris. There's various junk there, yeah.
Windows were still intact where the vertical stabilizer would have hit. Although these windows were considered blast-proof, it's not reasonable to suggest that they would be 757-proof. Oddly, just beneath these windows, right in the center of the hole, column 14AA on the second floor remained intact.
Well, first of all, the hole's too small to disappear a plane. The hole in the Pentagon, disturbingly, is not plane-shaped. Yet we were just taught a few minutes earlier that crashing aircraft create plane-shaped holes in the towers. So that's the Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote type crash image that I've shown you there.
Columns in the area where the right wing.
Hi, this is Richard Gage with Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. We're here at One Post Street in San Francisco speaking with State Director for Dianne Feinstein, Senator, and he brought with him a 45-year explosives expert, Don Hansen, who proceeded to shut our presentation down almost immediately without being open to it at all, stating, well, I've seen all your stuff, I've read all your stuff, and through the questions and answers it became exceedingly obvious that he hadn't seen or read much of any of it. He wasn't interested in learning anything, he was simply declaring that it would be impossible. As Jim Hoffman cited, I am not convinced and I will not be convinced. And this is what we come up against. It is the emotional programming that governs rationality in a lot of people, in all of us presumably, but him more than others in the case of 9/11 evidence, which we brought and presented before we were shut down. But we proceeded to present more evidence at nanothermite, spheres, lateral ejection, free fall acceleration, Building 7 evidence coming straight down against 40,000 tons of structural steel. All of that evidence was meaningless to him because he could not conceive of how it could be possible that such a conspiracy could happen, because after all, we would have heard about it by now, somebody would have talked, our government wouldn't do this to us. All of these excuses for not thinking, for not looking at the evidence, for not being awake enough and willing enough to have an open mind, even though they said, oh, I have an open mind. That doesn't make an open mind. It's fascinating, the psychology we're up against in presenting the evidence for explosive demolition to people who can't conceive of it. It's like pouring water into a cup that's already full. It can't go in. So I was ready to leave after 10-15 minutes, but I sat through a whole lot of other denials of evidence as we presented other points in addition to the buildings, the hijackers, the airline put options, the other evidence that we went through. We ran out of batteries.
This one's still going?
Good.
Keep going.
So we're done with this office, I think.
Yeah, they're probably done with us too.
They're done with us. So we'll go to where we can be heard, and we won't stop.
All of a sudden, I looked up, and about 20 stories below the fire, I saw from the corner, he's talking about the North Tower, the same building that the two firefighters were talking about. I saw from the corner, boom, 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 just like 20 straight hits, just went down. And then I just saw the whole building just went, and as the bombs were going, people just started running, and I sat there and watched a few of them explode. And then I just turned around and I just started running for my life, because at that point the World Trade Center was coming right down.
The fire trucks that were there originally were on fire. Windows were blown out. Cars were exploding. There's big holes in the side of buildings that the explosion fired out to. They told me afterwards it wasn't explosions. I was talking to one of the architects that they pulled in, because he was talking to me about it. He said, "What did you see?" I said, "I saw the fire, and when I looked up, I saw around the 70, because the fire was on the 96th floor. So I looked down, and it happened probably 70, 75, I can't be specific. I looked, and I could see the corner, and it just started going pop. It just started going boom, 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 boom. And he goes, "How fast?" I go, "Like firecrackers."
Now, there's no evidence that Paul Lemos was ready to give up what he believed he thought he saw. But already on 9/11, on the scene, he's being told what he didn't perceive. There is no way at that point that anyone could have claimed to know scientifically that this man had not perceived explosions. Hadn't studied the rubble, the physical residue, hadn't done a comprehensive study of video or still footage, hadn't done a comprehensive investigation of eyewitnesses. How on earth could he make that judgment? But there's more. He's interfering with a criminal investigation. I don't care whether you look at this as a homicide investigation or a fire investigation or a bombing investigation. In all three cases, it's clear that eyewitness testimony is important, and that you go to the scene and you gather it. You don't tell eyewitnesses what they did and didn't perceive. This eyewitness evidence has been ignored or suppressed by the 9/11 Commission and the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Because if we ask how many references there are to eyewitness statements about explosions in the towers in the 585 pages of the 9/11 Commission, we find that there is one sentence fragment. They are discussing firefighters who were in the North Tower when the South Tower came down, and this is what they say. Those firefighters, not standing near windows facing south, had no way of knowing that the South Tower had collapsed. Many surmised that a bomb had exploded. That's it, in 585 pages. This implies that eyewitnesses who thought there were explosions were in the North Tower at the time the South Tower came down. In fact, most of them